Here is a step-by-step guide to creating a more complex pattern using Photopea. Please pause this at any moment that you need to. There's visual aids and audio instructions throughout. First of all, open Safari, then Google. Then in the Google search engine, look up Photopea. And it's the first in the list, and it's highlighted in light purple on the list here on Google. Now once you get on to Photopea, when it loads, this is the interface that you'll see, and there's lots to get your head around, so I'm just going to go through some of these functions with you. So first of all, in red, these are the tools that you're going to be using. Now, not all of the tools are going to be used today, so I will explain the different tools as we go. At the top is the sort of functions that you'll be using mostly today, such as File, Edit, Image, Layer, and Filter. And please make sure the area highlighted in yellow, you've got that ticked Transform Controls. That allows you to move your layers around the page. Now, to open a new document, you would go to First, File, New. Then it will come up with a new project. You give that a title, Pattern 1. Make sure the background is white, and it'll give you a few options. Now underneath it says Create Social. You can choose which sort of template you want. It doesn't really matter because you're going to crop down your image anyway. What you want to avoid is the templates on the right because they have pictures and coloured backgrounds, which is just going to confuse you when you go into your pattern making. To view your blank page more easily, it's quite small as you can see on the screen just now. So what you need to do is pay attention to these little triangular shapes here and pinch them in. These actually show the layers, so you're going to use these later on, the second one on the right. But for now you can minimize it so you can see more of the screen, and that's what you'll see in front of you. You can also go into view in the menu at the top and zoom in if you wanted to do that as well. Now, opening your pattern from your iPad, you go to File, and then you go to Photo Library, and you should have your pictures of your painted patterns in there. That should open your pattern, and again, with the sort of squares at the side of your image, you can resize that and view it as easily or big or small as you want on the screen. Now the first step is with your pattern is to manipulate the colour, and how to do that, you go into Image Adjustments in the menu at the top. First of all, look at the brightness and contrast, and there's little sliders to help you do that. Then after you've done that, you can go into hue and saturation, and that's a more dramatic manipulation of your image or your pattern. The hue and saturation function gives you a few options. The first one you should look at is saturation. That can make it lighter, darker, even black and white if you wanted. The hue function here, the slider, is quite dramatic because it can change the colour quite dramatically. Try not to go over the top with this because it could make it look quite garish or change your colour scheme. Now, filters can dramatically change your design ideas, so this is a bit of experimentation here. So what you do is go into filter and experiment with different filters. This one I used a stylized filter. What you can do is just play around with them and if you don't like them, just go back to edit and step backwards and it'll take you back to your original pattern. Now, copying your pattern onto a blank page, that's important because we're going to layer your patterns. So what you want to do is select all. That selects the whole pattern. If you wanted to just do a section of it, you could do a rectangle marquee for that, and I'll show you later how to do that. So then you go to the edit function after you've selected all and copy. Then in the edit menu, you go to paste. Make sure that before you do that, you've opened up your blank page. So when you go paste, it will appear on your blank page like this. Since we're going to layer a few patterns together, you could decide to manipulate another pattern. You could use another filter on it, change the color. It's up to you, but do that before you go into the next stage. Now this is the tricky part. Once you have copy and pasted your second pattern onto your blank page, with your first pattern on it as well, what you can do is now move your patterns and layers around the page. Now first of all, the tricky bit is trying to make sure that it moves. So the little sort of squares that you can see around each pattern is the function where you can resize and move around your pattern on the page, but this can be quite difficult, especially in a small screen to do, so it takes a little bit of patience. But to actually resize it, if you look on the right hand side where I've highlighted, that's usually the one that resizes it and moves it around. You can also, if you go to one of the sides, like the left hand side in the middle, you can flip the pattern to the other side if you wanted to do something like a mirror pattern on top. Now once you're happy with the placement of your pattern, what you're going to do is you're going to consider the opacity of that pattern, and that gives a more kind of abstract appearance to your overall pattern. So what you need to do is pinch these little triangles again, and so that you can see the layers, and that shows you, like a sandwich, the different layers in a sandwich. So the top layer is layer 2, that's the last pattern that you copy and pasted in, and layer 1's beneath, and then you've got the background in there. Okay, so what you're going to look at now is the opacity tool, and slide that up and down for layer 2, and you'll see a kind of ghost-like appearance of your top pattern. This can look really, really interesting because you get so many different shapes and designs and motifs all together. When you're happy with what you've got with the opacity tool, what you want to do is crop down your pattern, because this is a little bit messy around here. So you select the rectangular tool here and make sure it's rectangle you select, and that will help you crop. It will give you an option to crop your pattern. So once you're happy with it, you selected the area you want to crop, you go into image and crop, and that will crop it and make it nice and neat. The next thing you want to go into layer. This is very important, and flatten image. That will flatten all the layers together, so there won't be 3 layers, there will only be 1 after that. So before you save your image, you might want to tweak your final pattern. So you could go back onto adjustments, look at hue and saturation again, look at brightness and contrast. You could even do another filter on top if you wanted. but just play around with this before you actually save your final design. Now, to save your design to your iPad, it's pretty straightforward. All you have to do is go to File, Save as PSD. That will give you the option to download your pattern here. And at the top of the screen, you'll see a little arrow pointing down the word way, and that will be in blue, highlighted in blue. And you click on the pattern 2, and that will bring you to your pattern in your downloads file in your iPad. Alternatively, you could screenshot your pattern instead of doing it this way and then crop it in photos. Just make sure that it's a big image. You've zoomed in on it if you're screenshotting your image in that way. Once you're finished, upload your final pattern to Photopea so that we can document that as evidence in your portfolio.